At the stroke of the midnight hour, when the world sleeps, India will awake to life and freedom.
August 15, 1947, the British Empire walked away from India. After 200 years of control, they packed up and left. No war defeated them. No invasion forced them out. Most people think one man's hunger strike did it, or maybe one politician's negotiation. But empire don't collapse because of one person. This is the real story. Three separate forces hit Britain simultaneously. When they converged, they created something unstoppable. This is the reality of the Indian independence that most history books won't teach. Let's dive deep. Act 1, the rebellion. First of all, let's see the first out of the three pillars that led to Indian independence. The ground level. 1917, Champaran, Bihar, British indigo planters had created a trap. Indian farmers were forced to grow indigo on 15% of their land and sell it below cost. If they refused, massive fines. If they couldn't pay, more debt. It was a system that was designed to keep the farmers poor forever. But Mahatma Gandhi arrived and did something simple but radical. He organized farmers to document every abuse, every illegal fine, every broken promise. Then he told them stop. No violence, no destruction, just stop working. The British tried to arrest Gandhi, but thousands of farmers backed him. The administration realized that they have to arrest the entire village. They gave up. The exploitative system was abolished. Lesson learned: when enough people refuse to cooperate, even the local British authority collapses. 1918, Khera, Gujarat. Crops had failed, but the British demanded full tax payment anyway. Tax during famine. It was exactly the obvious injustice that could unite people. Mahatma Gandhi organized a tax strike. No violence, no destruction. Farmers simply refused to pay revenue until the tax was reduced. The British sent collectors to seize property, but who would buy land stolen from famine victims? The entire community boycotted auctions, and then the administration couldn't function. Finally, they reduced the taxes. Another lesson: economic non-cooperation could paralyze the colonial government. In 1928, Bardoli, Gujarat, despite famine, the British raised land revenue by 22%. And then Vallabhbhai Patel organized the response: complete non-cooperation. Farmers refused to pay, and when the government seized property, no one would buy it. And when they brought in outside buyers, the community boycotted their business. And when they tried to collect by force, entire village practiced passive resistance. The British faced a choice: use massive violence against peaceful farmers or back down. And they backed down. By 1930, the strategy was perfected. Find a clear injustice that affect millions, organize complete non-cooperation, force the British to either use massive violence or surrender. It worked flawlessly every time. Now that ground level was covered, it was time to cover the second pillar. The national level. During the British Raj, the British had made it illegal for Indians to make salt. Now think about how insane this sounds. You couldn't make salt from the seawater without British permission in your own land. Every Indian needed salt. The poorest family were hit hardest by the salt tax, and the law was so obviously unfair that anyone could understand it. And then Mahatma Gandhi announced that he would walk to the sea and make salt illegally. The British were not worried because it was just one old man breaking one law. They could handle that. But they completely misunderstood what was happening. March 12, 1930, as Gandhi walked, people joined him. Not because they were ordered to, but because they understood what this meant. One Indian was defying the empire and daring them to stop him. And then 240 miles later, when Gandhi picked up salt on the beach, it wasn't just about salt anymore. It was proof that Indians could choose to stop obeying. The response was immediate and nationwide. People made salt everywhere. The British arrested 60,000 people, but every arrest proved the point. Britain needed massive force to stop Indians from making salt. This wasted a huge amount of resources every time someone broke the law, but they still did it. They would do anything just to retain power. And all of this led to a lot of unrest at the national level. And a few years later, the British made their biggest mistake. August 1942, without asking any Indians, Britain declared India as a part of World War II. And the message was very clear. Indians had no say in the decision affecting their own lives. Mahatma Gandhi's response was devastating. Quit India, do or die. This movement led to massive revolts. Within hours, the British arrested every major Indian leader. They thought removing the leadership would actually end the movement, but it had the opposite effect. The movement grew even more. For the first time, the independence movement operated without major leaders, and it was terrifying. Students organized protest, workers sabotaged railways, farmers attacked government buildings, entire region created parallel governments, 550 post offices destroyed, 250 railway station damaged, 70 police stations burned. The British Empire needed its entire military just to maintain basic control in its most valuable colony. Then in 1946, Indian sailors in the Royal Navy decided they've had enough. It started with complaints about food and racist treatment. When British officers ignored them, 2,000 sailors went on strike. And within 48 hours, 78 ships and 20,000 sailors in revolt. But here is what broke the British. When officers ordered other Indian troops to suppress the mutiny, many refused orders. Workers in Bombay struck in solidarity. Students marched. The colonial government watched helplessly as they couldn't control anything. From 1917 to 1946, something fundamentally changed. India had become ungovernable. The British weren't administering a colony anymore. They were occupying hostile territory with unreliable army. But massive resistance alone couldn't force Britain to leave. While millions fought in the street, a different battle was being fought in conference rooms and legislative halls. Indian politicians were systematically dismantling the legal foundation of colonial rule. Act 2. Destroying the justification. Mass resistance created chaos, but chaos alone doesn't win independence. It just gets you more repression. Indian political leaders understood they needed to fight on two fronts: make India ungovernable while simultaneously prove Indians could govern as well. 1929, Lahore, Jawaharlal Nehru became Congress president and made a declaration that changed everything. So previous leaders had asked for dominion status, which is independence with ties to Britain. Nehru disagreed. Let's win these elections and prove we can govern better than they can. Congress swept the elections. They formed government in 7 provinces governing over 100 million people. Suddenly, Indians were running schools, hospitals, police forces and courts efficiently, honestly and successfully. The British excuse that Indians couldn't govern themselves became impossible to defend. While building domestic credibility, Nehru was fighting another battle internationally, through articles, through books and through speeches. He positioned India as a part of a global freedom movement. His message to the world was simple. India's fight wasn't just about one colony. It was about the principle that all people deserve self-determination. This international campaign would prove crucial when global circumstances shifted against Britain. While Gandhi organized mass resistance and Nehru built political legitimacy, Subhash Chandra Bose pursued a third strategy: armed resistance. Bose's logic was straightforward. Britain was vulnerable during World War II. If Indians could create military pressure while Britain fought other wars, independence might be achievable through force. The Indian National Army wasn't just about fighting. It was about proving a point. 40,000 soldiers, 18,000 civilians, Hindu, Muslim, Sikh, united under one command. This directly changed British claims that Indians were too divided to work together. Despite different approaches, Indian political leaders maintained coordination on crucial decisions. And when Britain unilaterally declared India part of the World War II, all Congress governments resigned in protest. Not just disagreement, unified political opposition. The Quit India resolution represented total political commitment. Congress wasn't asking for negotiations. They were demanding immediate British withdrawal and accepting the consequences. Even after mass arrest, political oppositions continued. The independence movement had become larger than any individual leader. So by 1946, Indian political leaders had systematically destroyed every British justification for colonial rule. Indians can't govern. Provincial government proved they could. Indians are too divided. INA and political unity proved they could cooperate. Indians aren't ready. Decades of political sophistication proved they were. The world supports us. International opinion was shifting against empire. The political case for independence was complete, but political pressure alone wouldn't force Britain to leave. At the same time, these domestic battles were raging. Global forces were shifting in ways that would make the entire British Empire economically impossible and strategically obsolete. Act 3. The world turns. Britain won World War II, but victory nearly destroyed them. By 1945, Britain's debt was 240% of GDP. They owned twice their entire national income. They borrowed $3.75 billion from America and $1.19 billion from Canada. Half their budget was going just to pay interest on loans. Meanwhile, running the empire cost 2,000 million British pound annually. To put that in perspective, that's like spending your entire salary on a car when you're already drowning in debt. Britain's top economist John Maynard Keynes put it bluntly: we must drastically cut empire spending. This expenditure is completely responsible for our financial difficulties. Britain was broke and empires are expensive. During the war, President Roosevelt had pushed Britain into a corner. So the Atlantic Charter signed by both countries officially stated that all people had the right to choose their own government. Churchill had resisted this, Roosevelt insisted. Suddenly, every colony had a legal document saying that they deserve freedom. Roosevelt consistently pressured Churchill: we can't fight fascist slavery while keeping people enslaved to backward colonial policies. Mahatma Gandhi wrote directly to Roosevelt: Allied promises of freedom sound hollow as long as India is exploited by Great Britain. America, Britain's most important ally, was actively undermining the British Empire. So when the United Nations formed in 1945, it started with 51 member countries. Colonies became independent and joined the UN. Every new country became a vote against colonialism. At every UN meeting, Britain found itself defending an empire that most of the world consider a relic. The diplomatic isolation was becoming unbearable. In 1945, British voters shocked the world. They voted out Winston Churchill, the great wartime leader who was also the empire's biggest defender. The new Prime Minister, Clement Attlee, looked at the situation practically and realized Britain lacks the manpower and political support to hold India against its will. So the empire was more trouble than it was worth, and the numbers were brutal. British military casualties in World War II was 5,69,501. Troops available in 1944, 100,000 fewer than 1943. Additional division needed for India, 7. Additional division available, 0. British generals were telling politicians that they cannot guarantee order in India with current forces. Here's the final irony. By 1945, India was economically stronger than Britain. India has emerged from the war as the world's 4th largest industrial power. India had a surplus of 1,300 million British pound, while Britain was begging for loans. India had money in the bank. The colonial relationship had completely reversed. By early 1946, every major global forces was working against the British Empire. What happened next was a gradual decline. It was a sudden collapse. Act 4, the chokehold. February 1946 to August 1947, 547 days. Here's how 3 forces strangled Britain until they had no choice but to run. It started with bad food. February 18, 1946, Indian sailors went on revolt. Emergency meeting in London reached one conclusion: if we lose the navy, we lose India. By March, 3 British ministers were on a plane to Delhi with one impossible job: figure out how to leave India without complete chaos. While they flew to India, 2 other cables reached London, the US State Department. American public opinion is increasingly hostile to colonialism. The Treasury. The empire cost us 2,000 million pounds annually. This is unsustainable. In May, Cabinet Mission announced their plan for independence. Both Congress and the Muslim League rejected it. The British faced a terrifying realization: a unified handover is impossible. August 16, 1946, Direct Action Day riots in Calcutta. 5,000 people died in 72 hours. The violence spread across Bengal, Bihar, and United Provinces. So by October, 3 crises hit simultaneously. In Telangana, communist peasant rebellions controlled 3,000 villages. In Delhi, the interim government was paralyzed. At the UN, debates about colonialism were getting hostile. The military assessment was brutal. We need 7 additional divisions for basic order. 0 are available. January 1947, Britain applied for Marshall Plan aid from America. And the American condition was clear: demonstrate fiscal responsibility, cut unnecessary spending. Everyone understood what that meant: end your expensive empire. By February, the cabinet mission plan was officially dead. Intelligence reports warned of possible military mutinies in Punjab regiments. The UN was admitting more anti-colonial nations every month. The breaking point, February 20, 1947, emergency cabinet meeting in London. The reports were devastating. India is ungovernable without massive military commitment. We are essentially bankrupt. America is threatening to withhold aid unless we decolonize. We cannot guarantee Indian troops' loyalty. That afternoon, Attlee announced to Parliament, the British government will transfer power by June 1948. His private note that day was, pray we can last that long. March 22, 1947, Lord Mountbatten arrived as the last viceroy with 15 months to manage the transition. And after 1 week of meetings, his cable to London was desperate. The situation is worse than reported. June 1948 may be too late. Every day brought new disasters. Communal killing in Punjab and Bengal, constitutional talks collapsing, both Congress and Muslim League losing control of their own followers. June 2, 1947, final crisis meeting at the Viceroy's house. Mountbatten, we have weeks, not months before complete breakdown. Military advisor, we cannot guarantee order past August. Political advisor, both Congress and Muslim League are losing control of their supporters. And next morning, Mountbatten made an emergency broadcast. Independence will happen on August 15, 1947, 10 months ahead of the original schedule. And his private cable to London explained everything. It was this or complete catastrophe. August 15, 1947, at 11:59 p.m., the British Raj officially ended. 547 days, three forces had created a chokehold that Britain couldn't break. Mass resistance had made India ungovernable. Political strategy had made continued rule illegitimate. Global circumstances had made empire unsustainable. And when all three forces hit simultaneously, Britain didn't choose when to leave. They ran before the wall collapsed completely. So today, as India takes its place as a global superpower, remember what really happened in 1947. It wasn't one man's fast that freed a nation. It wasn't one's political speech that convinced an entire empire. It wasn't one global event that changed everything. It was millions of small actions creating an unstoppable force, the butterfly effect of freedom. Small actions, massive consequences, the power of convergence, and that's how you bring down an empire.